So I need to know, pharma has done so much great work for humanity. Surely it is the voice of clarity and reason. Would you agree?
We'll answer the question.
Do you really want answers, Steve?
I think I'm entitled to them.
You want answers?
I want the truth.
You can't
handle
the truth.
Well, maybe we can handle the truth. We just don't want to face up to it. The reality is that significant segments of the public don't trust pharma and willingly believe that we profit from pain, hide mistakes and hold back cures. In this episode of Off Label, I'm joined by Davina Lau from Astellas and Sabrina Gommersall from Pop Health to talk about radical honesty, reputation and rebuilding trust. This one's not about spin, it's about truth. Can you handle it? Let's find out. Davina, Sabrina, welcome to Off Label. It's so great to have you here. How are you doing today?
Good, thank you.
Good. First thing in the morning, got the beach scene behind me and rainy skies on top of me.
That's great. Well, it's nighttime here, so you're one up on me anyway. But it's great to see you again, Sabrina. It's been a while since we last caught up in London. And Davina, I saw you just a little while ago, but great to be catching up because this is a really important podcast. It's all about uncomfortable truths. And before we get into it, I'm just going to reflect back to Sabrina, your very clever idea at the Pharmageddon conference where you literally took some truth serum. What was in it? I'm not entirely sure. Is it a secret sauce? Was there alcohol? I still don't know.
A little bit of syrup and then my special recipe made in the lab.
Well, I'm so disappointed I didn't get a chance to try it. I had massive jet lag. I would have put anything into me to get a boost, but it certainly did the trick because I remember that session very clearly, and it's what's inspired this podcast today. So let's kick off by unpacking and debunking some of the biggest myths going around relating to pharma. And there's three big ones that I've continually pop up, and they've haunted us all probably since we started out in the industry. Whenever you've been on some sort of social media platform and ventured into some conversation about medicine. And the first one is pharma makes us sick to sell the cure. People genuinely believe this. So I want to start there. Why do you think this story, how did it evolve and why does it persist?
I think pharma is playing a game. Well, it's not playing games. It's making money out of people's health. So people assume it's therefore in its best interest to make people sick so it can make more money, which obviously, as we know, working in the sector isn't true. But that's where people's minds want to go.
It's such a simple thing to hear and buy into, isn't it? So what's the industry done or failed to do to feed this type of mistrust? Do you have any top-line thoughts on that one?
I think we've not done ourselves any favors. I think throughout the pharma industry history, we have had examples whereby we've not necessarily done the right thing. And obviously then it's painted the entire industry quite badly.
Yep.
I think Purdue Pharma, that big scandal about opioid use disorder hasn't helped. Yes, and I think not one, but two or three even Netflix TV series on it. And obviously with Netflix, they do take liberties with regards to that as well. Even going back further than that, the Tuskegee experiment in the 70s on the Black communities, having experiments done on them without them knowing. So it's things like that that haven't painted us in a good light.
No.
And I think that helps feed into the narrative as well. And I don't think pharma as an industry has commented on either of those incidences. Generally, as an industry, we don't comment on that.
No, Davina, you're right. And there's something you just said there that's struck a chord with me, and that is that Netflix tells a better story. They're very good at boosting the narrative and that type of thing. So pharma doesn't tell the story properly. And if they don't, who fills the void in this when people are looking for information? Who's stepping up to the plate and what's the potential cost of that?
I think that pharma has, it keeps its doors quite sort of buttoned up and it opens up when it wants to. So people don't always see or think they don't always see what goes on behind pharma, and then they make up their own impressions in terms of what happens inside. And I think that's where you get the mistrust building. And then you get these other voices coming through of influencers who have big followers, who talk a lot of nonsense, but people still follow them. And that's where, people like these people more. They see more of them. They're more authentic. and people lean into them because they trust them more ultimately, and pharma stores are still shut. And I think that's where one of the problems lies.
I think the other problem as well is that facts can be boring.
Yeah.
Sensationalism sells, paracetamol causes autism,
Oh, man. I mean, imagine if one thing pharma said could make the impact around the world that particular statement did. You're so right.
Yeah. I think that doesn't help. We live in an era whereby sensationalism gets more attention. And I think that's just how we're built right now.
We're certainly becoming conditioned in that way. So what's the cost of that, this type of misinformation?
Yeah.
Is it something to worry about?
Yes, because like in the case of vaccinations, people aren't taking their vaccines. They fundamentally see themselves as healthy. So why should they need to prevent any future diseases or illnesses? And now we're seeing things that should be cured and curable, like measles, sort of, making an impact and having and killing people.
I don't think it's an over-exaggeration. I heard recently that misinformation is the next pandemic. And there was a number thrown around by Vern from Havas Links's Dr. Truth's report they did, that apparently the cost of misinformation to the US healthcare system in US dollars is about $300 million a day, which is a staggering amount. When you talk about these sorts of things and diseases rearing their heads again, there's something wrong and there's a narrative that needs to be told. So let's try and lean into that a little bit more. But there's still a couple more myths. Here's another one that we hear a bit. Pharma only cares about profit before patients. I've heard medical students say this. For some reason at medical school, there's a bit of a bad narrative about pharma in many instances, and they come out, then they get to meet pharma and understand, okay, that maybe there's a different side to this coin. But how big of a deal is this particular myth?
Sabrina, you can go first.
It's a big deal, I think, but what people don't understand is pharma needs to make money to then reinvest that money into research and development, and that's where you get more sort of support for more diseases and more the progress that we've made over the years from the investments that have been made is vast. I mean, that said, it is a profit industry. It's not for profit, so there is extra money being made, and I think that's where people just automatically hone in on. But you do need the money to reinvest in, to make more drugs to make people better.
I think also on average, clinical trials cost 1 to 2.5 billion for it to, from preclinical, from discovery stage all the way to commercialization. And out of 10 clinical trial candidates, in reality, probably 2 or 3. The industry average is about 30% success rate. So out of 10 drugs, 3 of them only make it to commercialization and launch. So if you're, do the quick math, not great at math, but on average 1 to 2.5 billion, that is a lot of money that goes to waste to make sure that what eventually ends up in patients is safe.
Indeed.
And then on the other hand, like, I think, all of us love charity groups, it's altruistic, but the problem with charity groups as well, and they will admit they have the same problem, if they rely on the goodwill of people to give them money, they struggle to do a lot of the things they intend to do. So I know we've been taught that profit is a bad thing, but profit is necessary to drive innovation.
Absolutely. It's funny how the narrative changes depending upon who's telling it and that type of thing. There's natural medicine companies and things like that just make extraordinary profits from the medicines that they're sold, but it's different somehow. So money does seem to be a third rail. There must be better ways to communicate the sustainability value and even the margins of the industry without sounding like the villain. But finding a way to do that is the challenge.
Well, Steve, in New Zealand, sorry, because that's where when I did
Big shout out to our
pharmacy,
Kiwi cousins.
we did have a session on pharmaceutical industry. So we did have someone from the pharmaceutical industry come in and teach us a little bit on how it works. We had somebody from community, somebody from hospitals. So 3 representations of the 3 different industries, pharmacy students and pharmacists would end up in, to give us career options as to where we want to go. And they did explain this, actually, the whole 30%, 1 to 2.5 billion, that is what I remember from that talk. And you're just like, okay, that makes sense. So I don't know whether it starts from there, especially if students are coming out of university saying that pharma is not a great place and we only do it for profit. They're getting that from somewhere. I hopefully not the university itself.
Yeah, I have heard that is the case in some instances at some colleges, but maybe not all. But yeah, it's certainly a sentiment that is noticeable.
I think there is also a lot of good that pharma does, like from a CSR point of view, that they don't actively communicate. So a lot of the communications and money on comms goes into the product, right? Doesn't go into like the CSR initiatives that they're doing, and nor even does it go into like explaining around what health systems do and how they fit into the health systems. You're just purely talking about the drug. So I think there's a couple of factors at play there as well.
That's a really good point.
I also think we're not allowed to talk about, early access programs, compassionate supply programs. And, particularly in the UK, we're definitely not allowed to promote that. So talk about it. But most of the time, doctors aren't even aware those avenues are available to them. So we're always in a situation whereby we want to help, but we're not allowed to talk about it. But then how will doctors know about it or clinicians know about it to help get access for their patients?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah.
It's a real catch-22. We touched on a little bit about the misinformation and what the perceptions that the industry has. But let's talk about the obvious silence that the industry tends to be known for, and what happens when pharma doesn't speak up. So, Sabrina, you just touched on the recent guidelines for vaccines and things like that, leading to confusion, backlash. The measles cases are surging after, I think it was supposed to be eradicated in the US in like the year 2000. I read the other day, it's like 9,000 cases somewhere. It's really bothering. There's an information vacuum, and misinformation is filling it up. There's a vacuum really because pharma's not taking the lead and doing it. How did we actually get here? Like, we made the medicines. Surely we had a lot to talk about the medicines, but then all of a sudden we couldn't talk about the medicines. How has it evolved, and what's the way out of it?
I think you could talk about the medicines, but you have to talk about the medicines in a certain way, and that's fine. And I think then there needs to be an element of gloss within pharma, but equally, I think there needs to be more authenticity so that people see who they really are, who's behind that, and that's where there's not that much investment. So when it comes to communicating around the success of a product, the results of a product, that's all there. But what about the sort of attempts that went into doing that, and the trials and the sort of research and the people behind the research, and really opening up? And I think that almost massively helped pharma's reputation, say in COVID, when we really saw a little bit more around what pharma was doing and all the input they were having, the success and the not success, but at least the progress they were making. And I think that there was a sort of piece of research done by report that said that, their patients' view trust in pharma was 60%, and now it's like dropped. Well, by 2004, it had already dropped by like 4%. So we're on the decline again. But I think having more of that openness, I think would massively help go somewhere to rebuilding trust, so people lean more into pharma when it comes to sort of getting their health information.
I think also, Steve, I think the attention spans are really short. Twitter is only how many characters long, and we need to present our drugs in a fair and balanced manner. And fair and balanced is, it's not difficult. It's just squeezing in all that information in someone who has a 20-second attention span is difficult. I know one of the comments, Sabrina, from our panel at Pharmageddon was that pharma doesn't always tell all the side effects. And we do. It's in the SMPC. It comes with your product information leaflet, but people don't always read it. But then if we started reciting every single side effect in that SMPC, patients won't take it. So we focus on the key things, but then we get accused then of cherry picking. But also, if you have a 15-minute presentation, you're talking about a phase 3 trial that took, 10 years, 5-10 years to come to the market. Are you going to squeeze all that information in 15 minutes, which is why they're handouts, which is why they're journal publications. So it is there. It's just that maybe it's not in an easily digestible format that the public will be able to take. And I do think that pharma does keep quiet a lot, like Steve, like you said. And I think that silence, having worked in pharma, I understand what that silence is. Is it better not to comment? A bit like the Queen, best not to say anything.
Yeah, that's right.
But then it's perceived as arrogance because we don't say anything, that we are in our ivory towers, that we are too proud to comment as well. So I think, like you said, I think, Sabrina, you said in one of your comments that, where there is a void, what's that intent then is then perceived. Public projects what they think we're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's certainly, there's no obvious answer here. The consumers are digesting and communicating differently, often in short form, and sensationalism kind of sells. There's got to be some sort of intermediary that the pharmaceutical industry needs to explore to try and get the big hitting sit up straight in your chair moments to stop scrolling and take notice. And I can already see, Davina, you're shaking your head, going from a legal point of view or a medical point of view, that the fear, the worry about risk is obviously, is that too tall a wall to scale? Can we change the regulatory environment and the appetite for risk internally to make a difference in terms of countering misinformation in the mainstream?
I think it would take a very long time. I think from a compliance perspective, my colleagues are not going to like me for this. I think from a compliance perspective, I think, there's some trailblazers like Rena Newton, Jean Wilcock. They're very open-minded. They see compliance as a strategic pillar, as, and as a partner to medical and to commercial. But I think the majority of compliance does attract personality types that are, they're going to risk, going to pharmacovigilance, going to regulatory. So they tend to be more risk averse. And if they sit within our compliance team, I think it will take a while. I think it will take some, early adopters in pharma companies to show the way, people like yourselves and Sabrina, agencies, to show how it can be done compliantly, to give the confidence to the rest of pharma that it can be done. I think, I'm not sure whether we will ever reach the levels of, there was a few years ago, one actress went on a 2 a.m. tweeting rampage with quite racist tweets, and then subsequently blamed the pharma company's product for her 2 a.m. rampage. And pretty much immediately, that pharma company, one of the employees of that pharma company tweeted, "Although all pharmaceutical drugs have side effect, racism is not a known side effect of our drug." And I just thought, oh, that was brilliant. The time so well, and it was just so on
Timing
point.
And the response.
So real. And it was just such a genuine response, and just read the room so well. But I cannot imagine us in the UK being able to do something like that.
Well, that rep was probably reprimanded in some fashion, if not let go.
Was it? Well, there you go.
I don't know, but that's my first response. As useful and as helpful as and impactful and as thing that message was to go out on your own representing a company of that particular product and engage with the public in that way. I guess in the States maybe it's a little bit different, but that's, in my mind, that's precisely the type of media footprint the industry needs in order, if we're really going to counter misinformation. You've got to get down in the trenches with people who are spouting rubbish and let the hard truths be told in that sort of matter of fact. As you say, the personalities that tend to find themselves into the compliance world are probably less cavalier than what it will take to get there. But at some point, we have to realise you've got to read the room and understand who the personalities are that you're trying to communicate with and how to resonate with them. Sabrina?
Yeah, I think Rena will thank me for this, but one of her things that she said that really stuck with me was that compliance is often used as the excuse, and it's not the reason why things can't happen. There is a way, and you just have to make it happen. I think when it comes to talking about products and risks and side effects, you have to be careful. But I think there are other things that pharma can talk about that can give themselves a better perception, that don't need such high regulation and scrutiny over them, and those are the things that I think could enhance their reputation as sort of create a halo effect for them as well. So I think you could create tiers of sort of scrutiny on certain things. You could also use and you touched on it before, like people within the organization as well, and like those thought leadership voices, and that's a lot of stuff that we do as well, just to create that sort of boost for the organization to see, the people behind it. And with that comes the personality, because that's often what, from at a corporate level lacks, is that sort of personality level and human side. So bringing the people forward, I think, will help as well.
Sabrina, do you also think as well, pharma doesn't prioritize comms? They don't think external comms are that important.
So it knows it needs to do comms, but whether it invests completely in comms for its reputation is different. So it will do it where it needs to. Obviously, there's issues management when the shit hits the fan. We need to come together quite quickly, and there you can turn things around, and statements can be turned around and approved quickly because they have to. But then I think, like I was saying, there's the other stuff, like the CSR, the sort of voices, the things like that are more nice to haves. And when you're trying to sort of tighten belts and budgets and things are getting tighter, you drop the things that you deem unnecessary. But maybe if you put more in there, the reputation would increase and people would lean in a bit more and things would change. It's not going to happen overnight, but I'd like to sort of do some experiments to sort of just see some difference.
It sounds like it really needs to happen, and a much greater load of responsibility and autonomy needs to be given to the communications team, with a direct line to medical, compliance and legal to ensure everything's okay. Yet in terms of getting the word out and countering misinformation quickly, or filling that void with just stepping up to the plate as pharma to be accepted as a smart, honest, life-saving, life-changing industry, a reputation that it obviously so sorely deserves. As comms are set to play a huge role in that. So
Steve,
maybe start a movement for the good comms team.
Steve, do you think we've reached that tipping point yet whereby pharma goes, we really need to counter this? I don't think pharma is quite there yet, even with all this misinformation and how much it's costing the healthcare industry, not treating measles, letting people catch measles and suffering the side effects, which they haven't seen in decades because it's supposed to be eradicated. Do both of you think we're at that tipping point yet from an industry perspective?
I'm a bit reluctant to dive in too deeply because I think it goes to a political layer, particularly in the US. The last thing you want to do is start contradicting too much the hand that's sort of responsible for your for revenues in many instances at the moment. But I think there's definitely a groundswell of sentiment that is growing from the well-read and experienced professionals within the organization know that something is definitely trending in the wrong direction. And at some point, there will be a tipping point, and hopefully it won't be too late and we can do something before that happens. I'm not sure about you, Sabrina.
Yeah, I think, you're going to see the impact, right? We're starting to see it now, and hopefully that might start to make some people want to take a vaccine more, but there's still a lot of work to be done, especially in vaccines. I think when it comes to taking a medication, there's an element of risk benefit that sort of a person sort of is, weighs up before they take it. And in the case of a vaccine, it seemed as preventative and they're not sick at the time. So why should they take it? And I think that's where we need to interplay and to raise the profile of vaccines. And there are programs that are out there, but like you said, it's political now, so the voices aren't coming forward in the way that maybe they need to.
If you're going to be taken seriously, if people are going to listen to you, it's not just what you say, it's how you say it. And that's to the detriment of so many very clever academic people in medicine who just have brains literally metaphorically teeming out of their ears, but have trouble igniting the enthusiasm of the listener. Alternatively, you have people who are brilliant storytellers and can really get you on the hook, speak absolute nonsense. So radical honesty has to take place. It's got to be somebody who can tell a story that knows what they're talking about and can defend their position. So let's imagine that does take place. I know it's a utopia at this point, but what real truth-telling and hard-hitting truth-telling could look like. And I want you just for a moment to react to this. And let's imagine a world where pharma does tell the truth in that confident, confrontational, but with empathy. What sort of world does that look like if that voice is out there circulating on the Twitters and on the X's and on Truth Socials and things like that? What does it ignite a huge online cavalcade of abuse and exchanges, or do people take a moment to reflect and maybe listen? It's a tough one.
I mean, if this is utopia, I'd like to say that people have more respect. I think whether they'll ever get over the fact that pharma's still out to make a profit from disease, I don't know, but I think they would have a lot more respect for the realism and the authenticity of the voice, because I think, we're now being drowned by inauthenticity and chatbots and AI. And I think the sort of showing the more human side is more important than ever. To not seem like, oh, you just, got a bot to write your speech there, and to convey feelings. And I think that will hugely help. And if it's utopia, it's going to make a massive difference because it's utopia.
I think we're making steps toward that utopia. I think recently Australia leading the way, banning social media under the age of 16, Finland teaching in schools, how to distinguish fake news from real news, particularly in social media. We're seeing introduction into the UK curriculum about, I know this sounds really basic, but also about like how boys can respect girls. So I think we're starting to see like governments around the world also acknowledging that there is a lot of fake news out there, and trying to teach the younger generation, because we still have hope for the younger generation compared to us adults, that, how to distinguish the two. But China also recently introduced this new law saying any influencers talking about finance or healthcare or anything like that, there's a requirement for them to have a degree in that particular area that they're going to be that they're talking about. Otherwise, they can take them offline, which is, I think maybe, considering some of the misinformation, a lot of the misinformation out there, that is quite an extreme version for now, but maybe it might become a reality. So I think the steps, we're getting there, but so hopefully it's not too far away, whereby, we reach that stage, Sabrina, like you said, people treat each other with more respect, people understand what they're looking at as well.
So it's a huge point. Do you remember like Dr. Gillian McKeith, who got massive backlash because she didn't have an actual doctor's degree? Do you remember? And then, but people are now like following other people and taking huge health advice from other people who don't have any degrees or qualifications in the area. So it's
I often reflect back when I was a GP rep, and I was in a surgery in Cairns in far north Queensland, speaking to two doctors about this, and how one of the a patient came in with having some emergency episode because she had some condition. I think it may have been blood pressure, and her next door neighbour said, "Oh, I've got blood pressure. Take one of these." And the neighbour just took it, because you trust friends, you trust people who are like you, and as much as what you would trust a doctor, or if not more. So, it's a challenge on all levels, particularly amplified in the online environment. Sabrina, you're right, but it's good to hear that there are steps, there are initiatives that are taking place. And I think the whole, that approach of only listening to the voice of people who have earned the right to sit at the table and comment on it, as opposed to someone who's just done a quick Google or ChatGPT search.
Pharma can take, because we're at the beginning of it. Pharma, being forward thinking, hopefully, would take the opportunity to also leverage the groundswell of this awareness that's coming through. I think Havas Links, with their misinformation advertisement, I think that was a very powerful advert that showed how easy it is to get down a rabbit hole. There is a current landmark case that's going through right now about a young lady suing Facebook and Meta for constantly showing her algorithm that worsens her mental health.
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
So that is going through, because as we know, because YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, they show you what you want. If you click on something, it just shows
the echo
you
chamber.
That.
It's a lot. That's what they prey on.
I think they were saying it's a landmark case in the same vein as how tobacco companies were then made responsible for advertising and causing addiction. So I think that's a case that everyone's watching with great interest.
Definitely. Gosh, I feel.
So I think that's right, because the big social media agencies do have the power to switch off the algorithm, but they've chosen to monetize it, which in some way I understand, but it's causing now these effects in the rest of the community.
Yeah, wow. Okay, so more optimism there. If that case goes forward, that could change things on a pretty significant scale. So yeah, let's keep an eye on that one. So let's move along, mate. It seems that the issue isn't that the public can't handle the truth. because maybe they can. Maybe there's optimism there that they're happy they want to know the truth. The industry hasn't been brave enough at this point to tell it and dare I say sell it, because you've got to. It's a sell as much as it is a tell, trying to get people to get on board with your way of thinking. So let's move on to what's the hardest truth. Also, the biggest myth that needs busting, that we touched on a few earlier, that we need to, in 2026, what's the main myth that has to be addressed, do you think?
Is it? I mean, there's one that we haven't touched on, is pharma hides its mistakes. Is that?
Yeah.
And I was thinking about that when you were talking about like the whole truth. And I think, people don't want to hear that there are sort of side effects and casualties from trials, but there are, and it's like, and those aren't always openly communicated, right? So can people handle all of those? Probably not. But it's part of research and development. And so I think you need to be careful in terms of how you communicate that. But at the same time, sharing mistakes makes you more human. So you need to talk about sort of the trials that didn't always work. Because
that's true. That's campaignable. Owning up is one of the hardest things to do in any form of life. Just ask my 4 and 6 year olds. But it's a psychological process that we all go through well into the business world, and that could resonate well as well. Fessing up where appropriate as a part of a wider campaign, talking about the good and the progress and that type of thing.
I think such a campaign would be good, but I think also you need to have trust, public trust first, in order for being open with the mistakes. And also I think with mistakes as well, like I said earlier in the podcast, about if we were to read out our whole side effect list on the SMPC, I think our brains are naturally wired to pick up bad news first, rather than good news. So absolutely. I think this whole, I know I've said stuff about my compliance team, but they were right when they say fair and balanced. So it needs to be a balanced sort of communication outlet, which is where comms team comes in very heavily as well. But I think to be able to be open and honest about mistakes. I don't know. Does pharma have public trust right now? No, I think that's why we're having this particular podcast. And how do we build that trust? I think this conversation is focused on as well.
Couldn't agree more. I don't think that the future of pharma, it's not about spin. It's about that sort of real, raw credibility up front, told in a fashion that people are receptive to. And even if that starts with a negative headline, you can imagine if you put something out saying pharma lied or something like that, people would click on it, but it gives you the opportunity, once you've got those ears and eyes, to turn it and put it in context or something like that. Obviously, Sabrina would put a much better example forward than I'd be in the comms team, but under the lights, that's the best I've got. So whilst we're running with it, we like to finish up with a little bit of fun. We like to try and lean into a bit of a movie theme when we finish up here. So we've obviously got one very obvious movie that we've leaned into here, and when it comes down to You Can't Handle the Truth, and that is the classic A Few Good Men. So I thought we'd just put it to you both. Which character in the movie, which of their personality in the film would most closely resemble your own? So I'll give you a couple of options here. We've got, first of all, Jack Nicholson's character, Colonel Nathan R. Jessup, the man who really at his core thought he was doing the right thing, but he wasn't. Tom Cruise, Lieutenant Daniel Kaffee, the lawyer after the truth that wouldn't stop until he got it, left it all on the field. Demi Moore, Lieutenant Commander Joanne Galloway, the lawyer fighting for justice and supporting and propping up Tom and pushing him to get things done. You've got Kevin Bacon, of course, Captain Jack Ross, the lawyer who really enabled the Colonel Jessup. And lastly, Wolfgang Bodison, who played Lance Corporal Harold W. Dawson, who was a good guy who in the end saw the light and saw to it that justice was played out and understood why. So you've got those, I think that's 5 options there. Does anyone want to have a stab at the first one?
Yeah, I'd be Joanne Galloway, because I can see the truth early and can help say the uncomfortable thing.
Nice. I like it. Good angle. Davina, what do you got for us?
I haven't seen the movie in years, so I can barely remember, apart from the fact that that was peak Tom Cruise. So I will go with Tom Cruise.
Tom Cruise, Apex Mountain. I'm going to go Kevin Bacon, not for this movie, but for Footloose, because I'm really, really light on my feet, and that's what I'm going to stick with for this one.
Kevin Bacon, he's awesome.
That's right. Get your Footloose on. I might play that music overlay when we finish up the podcast here. Guys, thanks so much for your time. It's really been enlightening. It's a hard conversation. There's no easy answers. I really appreciate your candor. Thanks again. Have a great day, and I'll see you both soon.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us, Steve. Been great.
Take care.
Thank you so much.